Yes. Let's get to it. Welcome, Odera. Good evening, everyone. My name is Olasendi Omoiwo once again, and welcome to the group mentorship session. Today is, of course, February 13th, 2024, a Tuesday for that matter, and a special day that also Roger successfully did something great, which he's going to be sharing with us, like during the course of the call, really. So just sit back, enjoy the session, and at the same time, when you have questions, please do make sure you ask your question. You can make use of the comment section. Hi, Ifelua, please can you mute yourself? Ifelua, or yeah, okay, thank you. So make sure you use the comment section to ask your question, or you can use the activity tool icon. So there is actually this this icon. You can see a triangle, rectangle. No, a triangle, a square, and a circle. If you click on it, you will be able to see different tools. Just go to the question and answer session. Then you can drop your question there, either as an individual or anonymously, right? So then you can also use the hand icon to raise up your hand if you really feel like you want to talk, which is what we really want to do, right? We want to have a conversation. We don't just want to feel like we are talking to robots. Of course, we are not, but I'm just saying. So yeah, that is just it. And I'm going to be yielding the mic to Roger now. I think there are some couple of questions I'm sure Roger will want to address from our, our resources that we have already. And at the same time, while those ones are going on, please, if you do have any question at any point in time, feel free to drop them. So Roger can also take them. Yeah, over to you, Roger.
Cool. Hey guys. There was one submitted via the form. I think we maybe start with that one. For some reason I can't copy it. It seems a little frozen, but I'll just read the question out. It was submitted by B. Best, I don't know if that was you. I don't know if anyone I'll start with the B on the call. But I thought it would be an interesting one, and I'll take this one slightly differently. I thought let's do this as like let me throw the question out and let's everyone contribute to see how you'd answer it. So the question is, Olasinda, I don't know if you can just maybe copy that and paste it into the chat just so everyone can see it. But the gist of the question is, how do you think about success metrics for a saving and investment product like PiggyVest? I recently joined a wealth tech company that has a digital investment product, and I'm trying to set up product metrics, North Star and supporting metrics to track. How do I go about this? Currently, the company is mostly concerned about total assets under management, total AUM, but I'm wondering if that's the biggest indicator of customer value. So maybe a quick round robin. Is total assets under management a customer metric? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Want to type in the chat? Feel free to throw it in the chat if you like. Let's make this slightly more interactive than.
Roger, could you take that again? I'm not sure people heard you.
Cool. Is total assets under management for a savings product like PiggyVest a customer-centric metric? Yep. Ifuela? Fiolua.
Yeah, you can call me Ife. Yeah, so I think total assets under management will matter more to the business itself than to an individual customer using the product. Yeah.
Great. So what would value to a customer look like? What is value?
A product like PiggyVest, right? Is that a savings product?
Yeah, a savings product.
Depending on their motivations for using the product, which is probably savings and maybe to increase earnings. So I would probably, just off the top of my head, why would the customer want to use the savings product? I'm guessing maybe they want to see some increase in maybe they have better rates than alternative products. So probably that their money is growing at a rate that they wouldn't get in another product. That's what I would say off the top of my head.
So a direct value to customer would be what is the interest earned or earnings made. So deposits minus, or net value minus deposits. And is that increasing month on month? So averaged out per user. So net profit or net earnings per month or per quarter per user is probably an interesting metric. It could be a percentage, it could be a value amount, but that would be one way of tracking value. Absolutely. Maybe another one to throw out. So typically there's two ways of looking at this kind of question. The first is, like what is valuable to the user. So in this case, them earning money. It's a savings product. So how do you measure how much money they're making on the product like that on the platform? That is a great measure. If it's a fixed income or fixed earning, or you earn like 5% or 10%, whatever it is, per year, or whatever the ratio is, or per month, I don't know what how leverage it is, then you're not really going to be able to manage that earning as much. So you might measure how much is a person investing. Are people generally investing more each month? So it's the amount of investments per user might be a way. If it's a fixed investment, then maybe just how much money they have saved with you. And are people generally saving more than they're withdrawing, or are they withdrawing more than they're saving? Because that's probably going to indicate good user behavior. Another way to look at it is, what does good savings habits look like? So what is a good savings habit for a user? Like anyone, forget about the product specifically. Like if you're saving, what is a good habit that you do? Anyone want to take a stab? Unmute yourself or throw it in the chat.
Yeah, I think number one, it should be consistent. So if a good saving habit will be consistent, and I think it will be incremental over time, because I'm assuming that the person may also start earning more in some sort of way. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to probably measure streaks or like number of investments. Joshua, go ahead.
Okay, I think a good saving habit is a long term.
Yeah, so how long they've been investing with you for. So kind of if someone's saving, you want them to be putting away every month and doing it recurring every month to go. So you want to measure streaks or number of weeks or number of months in the last 12 that the person's been investing, or the percentage of users who deposit every single month with you, like who make a deposit every month. What percentage is that? So those kinds of metrics would be good user behaviors for a savings product. So those are probably things that, if your platform is optimizing to get them to do more of that, they're going to be better savings. They're going to earn more money. They're going to be saving more money, and your AUM, your total assets under management, is going to go up if you get these things right. So part of the problem with AUM is, one, it's a company focus metric, as Ife mentioned. The other is that it's a lagging indicator. So it's the lagging indicator of, have you been successful at all these other things? So it's not a very good North Star metric, because you don't really, like, if that number goes up or that number goes down, like, you don't really change anything. If your AUM goes from like 100 million naira to 150 million naira, like, what do you change? Or if it goes from 100 million to 90 million, like, what do you change? Like, how do you get people to invest more money? And the answer is, it's not really actionable. But the leading indicators, like, are they investing more every month? Are they investing regularly? What percentage of your user base invests regularly? All of those are showing leading indicators that are driving good investment behaviors that ultimately will have a larger assets under management over time. So generally, if you want a North Star metric, or if you want something that your team's going to be optimizing for, you want something that's highly actionable, that drives, that if the number goes up, like when you roll out a new feature to tell users when they've hit streaks, or to make their fees are lower if they've invested every month, or like each month they invest, they get a kickback of 0.5%, or a bonus of 0.5% of their savings, or you reduce the fees, or some behavior like that. As soon as you roll out that feature, you'll see the metric move. It'll be almost immediate. And so those are the kinds of metrics that you want to be navigating your business by, i.e. the North Star metrics, or what your KPIs and dashboards are. So in summary, you don't want it to be business value, you want it to be a customer value. You want it to either align with what value looks like for your customer, or what are good behaviors for your customers to be doing that are actually going to deliver more value for them and ultimately more value for you. And so you're starting to look at that. And then while you're doing that, you want to make sure that it's a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. You want to make sure it's actionable, i.e. not a vanity metric. A vanity metric is, if it goes up or goes down, what would you do differently? And if you can't answer that question immediately, then it's probably not a very good thing to have as a North Star metric. So I don't know if B, if you're on the call, but I don't know if that answered your questions. For anybody who is on the call, any follow-up questions, anything unclear, anyone want more clarity?
Hi, hi, Roger.
Hi, Bebe.
Yeah, so yeah, I sent in that question.
Ah, very good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you've given me I've gotten quite a few ideas from here. Thanks everyone. I've been thinking about in the same way, so trying to identify at what point do user get value from using our product. I'm just trying to settle on that. But the responses I've been getting are very divergent, and I've been unable to come settle on one, what's the one to use, what's the one action to drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, this thinking about it in terms of what does good savings and investment behavior look like, and then trying to come up with metrics around that. That's an area I have explored before, and I think I'll start thinking around that.
Yeah, because you could be measuring why are people saving, and people can save for 1,000 different reasons, but the habits of good saving are all the same. So do they have a target? Do they have an intention of what they're saving for? Are you how are you driving the right habits that they're constantly putting? Are they making progress towards whatever they're saving for? And so do you have a way of them setting a savings target and then giving them feedback on how they're doing towards that you can kind of prompt them to keep engaging with it? That could be one way. That'll be something you'd do to drive the behavior of more regular investing.
Right, that makes sense, Roger. Thank you so much.
Cool. It could also be how much money you've saved or how much money you've made. It could, and often making that more tangible helps. So saying you've saved 5 coffees in fees this month, or whatever it is in savings, in good savings habits, or you're in the top 10% of Nigerians for your savings habits. Let's take these actions to get you into the top 5%. That sort of thing, that you can nudge users towards the right behaviors. But think about those actions that will help add value to the company. And typically when you think about value streams or value stream mapping, you're looking at value creation and value capture. So where do you create value for the user? And what habits do they take in order to receive that value? Where are the aha moments before that? And then on the business side, it's how do you capture value? So how do you measure whether you're capturing value out of that? And that might be your total assets under management, or it could be a whole bunch of other things tied to that. But you look at value creation for the customer side.
So how do you go about answering that question? Where do you create value for the customer? Because the answers would vary very widely. At least that's what I've been getting so far. So how do you go about getting an answer that you go ahead with for that question?
Can you give me some examples of answers you have been getting that vary wildly?
All right. So I've gotten answers that, so you can, when you put money in, it's converted to dollars. So some people say when the Naira depreciates, and then they get, that FX spread difference. So when the Naira increases value, which can happen in 3 days. It's totally the market. I've also gotten, when they receive their first payouts from a plan that they created, which can be up to a year. So say they just put in $200 and they save it for a year or 6 months, and at the end of that 6 months, that's when they get value, when they get what they saved for. So yeah, those are 2 very different answers. It's one could be in a couple of days, one could be in as much as 1 month. Sorry, 1 year.
Sure. So what you're looking for there is, firstly, those are 2 very different products, and don't think you need to find one metric to measure all products in the most accurate way. Ultimately, what you're looking for is, in both cases, people are trying to make money, or they're trying to end up with more money than they had when they started. Be that they convert it to dollars, and then when it drops to 1,500, you convert it back again, and you've made 20% or whatever it is. Otherwise, a long-term investment, you've invested it, it's grown over a year, and when you've got it back out. So there, I would look at you can look at a ratio of net earnings per user. So are our users across all our products, are they making more money when they use our products, then losing them. And you could break that down per product. So at least then you have one metric that you measure for each product, that they're slightly more comparable, but they'll be very different. The numbers will be very different. The rate of earnings from a FX hedge product is going to be very different to a 12-month investing product. And so that's fine, but at least you can then measure them all over like net earnings or net percentage earnings, and maybe annualized, or put it per month, or annualized net earnings will get you something that even if the person's trading FX and doing FX hedges, if they did that repeatedly over the year, like, do they make money, and are they making more money in that versus the long-term investments? That's it.
So it's actually the same product. It's just, people use it different ways. Well, but it's the same product.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, if they're doing it, then they're doing it to save money, to get more money out than what they got in. So how do you measure how much more money they got out from what they put in, and maybe divided by the time period that they had it over there for? So something taking into account of what that looks like, or annualize it over a 12-month period, or rolling 12-month period, or 3-month period, whatever that is.
Thanks so much. That makes sense. That'll give me some
even the long-term savings products, you could say, well, if the people were to withdraw it now, what would they get? What would they get out? Even if they technically can't withdraw it now, they'll only withdraw it in 9 months' time. You can still do, like, every quarter, or every month, you can have an asset value ratio of right now, if we were to liquidate this investment, and return it to the person, how much profit would they make? And then you can do that and annualize over the thing.
Okay. So what I've heard so far is, like, basically I need to create, like, different, so to speak, metric buckets where I can, like, just measure different aspects of customer value, product health, and how we're driving that with customer behavior. Yeah,
totally. And if someone is using you for FX hedge, like, you want to measure value in a slightly different way, right? There are ways of you trying to level things out, but don't feel bad of having like a North Star metric of net earnings per user, per year, or per quarter. And then you have your smaller metrics, your KPIs would be product specific. So for this product, these are the 1 or 2 things we care about. For this product, these are for the long-term investments, are they investing regularly? Or if there's an option to draw down early but lose some of the thing, what percentage of people are doing that? And is that number going up or down? But basically, you want to think about each of those metrics. If this number goes up, what would I do differently? And if this number goes down, what would I do differently? Like, would I change my behavior? And if that KPI changing wouldn't change your behavior, then it's a bad metric.
Thanks, Roger. This has been very helpful.
It's also not, like, don't confuse this stuff with, the business should track a whole bunch of long-term lagging metrics like that. You should absolutely be doing that, but you can't be running your business, running your monthly. You can't be measuring your performance on a monthly or quarterly basis by lagging metrics. So, like, just be aware that, like, having KPIs at a dashboard of metrics that you're looking and you're optimizing for is very different to measuring long-term business health that you put in investor decks, and like chat to the board about, and those sort of things. That's like long-term business health. And those can be completely different. In fact, they probably should be completely different metrics.
Quick follow-up question. How do you go about identifying, which metrics you're looking at very closely on a daily or a weekly basis, as opposed to which one you're looking at a more long-term basis, say monthly?
So the ones that are changing weekly or monthly or daily are typically ones that are related to the strategy or the actions that you're focusing on right now. So if you're rolling out a new investment product, or cheaper rails, or like whatever the feature set is that you're currently rolling out, or the strategic imperative, like we need to, if for the next 6 months we need to just focus on getting market share. If that's what the business strategy is, 6 months we're going to focus on market share. Then after that we're going to focus on assets under value, or return for investments, and then the next year we'll focus on growing assets under value. So if we're focusing first on market share, we're going to have more user signups, conversion rates, like how many people land on the landing page and actually make their first deposit. Like, what's the drop-off percentage? And then all the changes we make are going to be rolled out to that. So that's like a short-term metric. But your long-term metric, you always want to be measuring assets under management. You always want to measure your average investment per user. You always want to measure the number of deposits per user. Like that sort of thing you'll track anyway. But for this 6 months, you might be tracking conversion funnels and activation rates and those sorts of things. And then when you've got a bunch of users and you want to get them to be investing more, you'll roll out a bunch of gamification mechanics or different reporting or ways of displaying their earnings. And then you want to look at, are we driving people to invest more and withdraw less? And so are we actually helping people make more money? So what kind of actions are driving that? So the second half of the year, your sort of dashboard KPI metrics would change more towards user behavior and engagement metrics as opposed to activation metrics, depending on the inflection points in your business strategy.
Yeah, that's solid. Thanks so much, Rira.
Cool. Anyone else have a question or want to follow on from that? If you have anything to add, it's really great to say something I missed or something you disagree with.
No, I think it was a good conversation to listen to. I do have a question. I just have been thinking of how to phrase it, which is, how do you approach North Star metrics when your product is an API? Knowing that you still want to drive value for your customers and your major stakeholders are external developers. So not because these are people that are consuming your API. So I've been thinking of how to phrase that question, if you have any ideas.
Sure. So the thing is, like, how do you add more value to the developers? That would be, so the obvious things, the long-term metrics you need to track is uptime. Like, is our service reliable? How many times is it up? That sort of thing. In the shorter term, though, you probably want to track like integration speed. So how long does it take from when we send someone an API key for them to actually be shipping data? And how do we get that time shorter? Because the sooner we can, if developers aren't making, like, they get value by making calls to our API. So how do we get them to make calls to our API? You can also look at, if they're using one API, like how many APIs or how many endpoints are developers using. So there might be one API that is like the reason people sign up with you. But then you have all these other value-added services that no one's really using. Then you want to say, okay, well, now that we've got them integrating quickly, and then everyone's using this one product, how do I incentivize people to use other products? How do we tie them together? How do we create more value? How do we help them learn about what those other products are and how they can add value to their business by bundling these together? And then you'll look at a whole bunch of changes on that. So then you want to manage the number of different endpoints that a particular customer, particular developer is using. So depending on what your strategy is, there's thinking about like what is going to help your business grow. Because the problem with an API is you're typically completely at the whim of the developers around what volume, how many times they call your API. Is a complete vanity metric, because if that number goes up or that number goes down, you have no control. That's exactly what I do. We have no control.
Is your major product an API as well?
Yeah, we're an SDK that banks and fintechs embed into their app, and we do address verification. So
do you so for certain other clients, like, are there some people that use your API directly with HTTP protocols? Are there some people that use the SDK itself? Are there some people that you build modules for? Everyone just uses the SDK?
Yeah, so we've currently got like everyone using the SDK. Flutterwave currently uses just our JavaScript, like the web SDK, but they're literally the only ones doing it. But most of the other most of the other fintechs, the banks are busy integrating and have been for years, which is why speed integration is one of the things I've been trying to work on. Bless their souls. But yeah, but if like some of our customers, they turn us on or they'll turn us off, or they've got feature flags. One of our customers has a feature flag. They had an issue on their side. They dropped the feature flag. They fixed it. And now we're sitting at 20% of the volume we were before. And it's literally just because they haven't turned the feature flag up. So it's like we have no control over how many times they call our APIs. Like we just don't. But we do have control over, can we add more value to their business? So like we do address verification. How do I help lean that into compliance? How do I build fraud? I'm looking at subscriptions so that they can automatically renew, to automatically buy, like call my API more often on a schedule. So say, I want to verify this person every quarter or every year or whatever it is. And then we're setting up subscriptions. So there's a lot of other products and services of how can we get people to use more product or get more revenue per address that we verified. How do we sell that to other people? How do we create that status? How do we launch more things around that people can use? Sort of create a more suite of products. Because we don't control the direct volume. So,
and have you ever had to deal with like deprecating any features?
Yes. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, and it's one of those things where you've just got to have a conversation with customers to say, look, we built this. This was initially the angle we're going in. What we've realized is we can't make money on this set of APIs in this way. The margins are big enough. You won't pay us enough. Other customers won't either. It doesn't actually make sense for our business to keep doing that. By all means, use one of our competitors. We're going to focus on being the best at being this thing that you do find way more valuable, that you are willing to pay for. And then you kind of you either grandfather them up or you just turn it off with enough notice and conversations and that sort of thing. So yes, we have had to do that before.
Okay, yeah, I think that's currently what I'm facing. We're in the process of deciding whether to continue a particular feature or not, and so it's, a lot of people use it and it's still bringing some money. It's not where we want to be long term as a business. So yeah, those are some of the questions I had. I would also say that if you could just say what would be the most important metric you are currently tracking, what would it be? I mean, of course, it might not be one, so it can be more than one if
yeah, totally. So our North Star metric at the moment is like as a company, it's number of verifications. So like number of verifications per month, like that's the core, that's like the long-term like metric that we do that's pretty consistent. This quarter, I'm focusing on COGS. So the metrics that I'm optimizing for are unit economics and cost per verification. So and I've managed to drop our COGS by 90% in January.
Wow.
Whoop, whoop.
Yay!
Through like a whole bunch of little changes, some big changes, some little changes, but like as a team, we sat down and like rethought the entire process, just optimizing for COGS, so that we don't go bankrupt in 3 months time, 6 months time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and turns out we could do a whole lot. So, and that's a great example of like we won't always be focusing just on like unit economics, dropping costs, but for this 3 months, it has been the focus of everything we've rolled out. Is like, what is the impact on COGS? We weigh it up and say, this one has a big impact. That's what we're going to prioritize. That's what we're going to ship. So that's a company strategic. We need to focus on COGS. And then for next quarter, I'm rolling out a whole bunch of features like instant verification and re-verification and subscriptions and like a whole bunch of things around that. We're actually embedding some agent verification APIs in as well. So there it's going to be, well, how do we verify an address once and then sell it multiple times without having to incur all the additional costs? It's about revenue generated per address created. So then I have a whole bunch of different activities and features and things we're building. Once we've got our COGS down, we can then focus, great, now the costs are low. How do we sell the same address multiple times to increase the revenue per address? So your average annual revenue per address is what we're looking at measuring, because you'll sell it a couple of months later. And so that's kind of what we're looking at and how we do it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I have a couple of other questions, but I would maybe pass the mic to anyone who has.
Anybody wants to stand up, otherwise we'll keep going. I can chat about this for a while.
Okay. Okay, so I was going to ask that, have you found that your documentation was maybe the ease of use of your documentation was okay? I think other people have questions,
yes.
so let me.
Yes, but I rewrote my documents last quarter. So
okay. How was that?
End to end.
Okay.
A pain in the ass.
Okay, I'll maybe if I have the chance
We'll
later.
come back to that.
Yeah, thanks.
Tamisa, I think you were first.
Okay. Hi, Roger. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I have a question. So, a couple of times when we're in a conversation, right, with the engineers, they start, a couple of them start, citing constraint around maybe what we are trying to build and what I'm putting forward. And I've seen that over time, I start defaulting to, thinking like a project manager, like working to the constraint of what the engineers are saying, as against, creating a better experience for the customer. And sometimes when this thing happen, you don't really know when you start, defaulting to such level of thinking. My question here is, how do you balance that level of trying to accommodate the constraint from the engineering team, and then also creating a better experience for your customer? Because at the point when you start to say, okay, let's do it this way, it affects the experience, but that's what the engineer said it's possible. Yeah.
Cool.
So
So
how do you
is the
balance?
engineering team on your team? Like, do you have, if your product wins, does the engineering team win too?
100%. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if they're outsourced developers, then it's a different story. But the way I found to fix that, so we had that problem as well. I've actually been doing a bunch of interventions this quarter around cultural shifts as well. But I find that happens the most when you're doing all the scoping and you're doing all the custom interviews. You do that, and you come to the developers with, "This is what we want to build," and the developers are like, "Oh, but you haven't thought of that, and what about that problem, and what about?" And then they're kind of just there to try and like reduce their risk, so that they're trying to add value by raising issues, but it's more about them reducing the risk of not being told to build this impossible thing that they haven't feel consulted in. One way that I try and fix that, and like I said, I'm actually literally doing this with my team, is trying to shift the mentality of the developers, that developers don't add value when you write lines of code. They add value when they solve the customer's problem. And so, and it's one of these really unintuitive things that, like, having developers part of the discovery process of interviewing customers, of unpacking the data, of doing the research, helps them get a much better context of the problem, that when it comes to actually creating the solution, they'll know when to push back because this is a constraint, and they'll know when to go, "Ooh, we can't do it because of that constraint, but we could do it this way." And so they start shifting the behavior that, like, hey, we're focusing on delivering value instead of just delivering code. And so that shift generally comes in when they're bought into the problem that you're solving, the value it delivers for the user, and how you can tie into that. So having them be part of the discovery process, having them be part of the prototyping and testing and interviewing, and like giving feedback into designs, being part of those workshops where you're trying to design where the buttons go and how these flow works. When I've found in my experience, when you do that, then the developers are a lot more bought in to the to the value delivery aspect of what the team is trying to deliver. And then when they raise a concern, they're like, look, they would have probably raised it at the design stage, saying, hey, the way you're trying to solve this is going to be difficult, but we might be able to do it if we solve it that way. Or let me just spin up a quick prototype to see if I can hit those APIs. And like, actually, those APIs don't return what you think they're going to return, but I found this alternative. Let's rather use this, and we'll change these screens. And they can do that in the design process instead of in the, like, once it's already been scoped and they just need to build it, and they're like, but I can't build this. And then they just feel left out. So the biggest way I can shift that mindset of the engineers is shifting them into a value creation instead of code delivery. And you do that by bringing them earlier in the process and having like cross-functional teams, and actually having them spend time not writing code. Generally delivers more value to customers in a shorter period of time than just having them churn out lines of code when they don't have the context and the buy-in of what value delivery looks like. Does that help?
Yeah, it does help. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. And also, just a follow up question, not to that anyway, but follow up question is, sometimes as well, we spend some time trying to think of maybe the 1%, the extreme case of, oh, we should building this product, and this might happen, and sometimes senior management they've thought about that. They don't see it as the 1%, right? But those edge cases, and sometimes you spend time trying to convince or trying to create the reason why this is just the 1%. This is not like our core users. And sometimes I find that I also, default in such a situation where we having a conversation, but at the end it's just for the 1% that those edge cases that are not like our regular uh, users. Can you also throw more light on how to, balance that, and also how to, communicate such level of challenge or such level of consent to, you know, stakeholders that this is just 1% and we should not be so bothered about this, because there was a conversation we were having 2 days ago, and the reason why I spent time in that conversation was the fact that a senior stakeholder requested that that's how he wants it to be. And then we end up spending more time for that conversation. But at the end, we went out. But how do you avoid such situation where we start having conversation for the 1%, those edge cases that are not like our core users, but we just want to cater for them just in case, or even sometimes build a solution, focus on bad actors, like building a solution that would just defend bad actors instead of building a solution for the good people that would use the product.
Yeah, so there's no, unfortunately, there's no easy answer to that question. It's going to depend quite a lot. There are 3 points that I will say. The first one is quite often the people who are senior have just seen quite a lot. And so often when they say something, even if it feels like an edge case, for them in their experience, it is more relevant. And so often like a CEO will want something in particular, but he can't tell you why, and he doesn't have the data to show you he's just like, just do it this way. But that's coming from 10, 15 years of trying to solve this problem and understanding it at a deeper level than most other people do. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes they actually are onto something, even if they can't articulate it in the moment. So generally, when it comes from it, like you should always consider it and say like, well, could this be true? Like I said, that's not always the case. Another thing is to see, can we look at the cost reward of that? So if we do have very specific user personas, we know that this is for a less valuable user persona or a much smaller percentage of it, is there a way to quantify what is the cost to solve this problem versus, like, if we were to lose those customers, how much revenue would we lose? So are we spending 6 months of the team's time focusing this one edge case that will maybe save us $1,000 a month? And because senior management work on budgets, they work on timelines, like that sort of thing generally matters to them. So being able to articulate the trade-off more effectively in numbers, in revenue, cost, that sort of thing can help. And the third strategy I would maybe suggest is, like, can you phase it? Can you say, we totally hear that is a problem, we'll totally get there, we're going to solve this problem first, and then we'll solve this problem, and this will be part of phase 2 or phase 3, or these are this series of problems. Like, what you're raising is a really relevant problem. Here's actually a more important problem to the same user group, but we're going to solve this problem first, and then solve this one, and then solve that one. So if they can at least feel heard and know that it is in the roadmap, and that you will get to it, and that you're getting to that, that often helps alleviate. And if you can explain why you're focusing on these things first and not those things, often they'll understand, like, oh, well, this builds into that, and then it'll be easier to solve this problem. So those are typically the strategies I would recommend. There may be others, but it's normally going to depend on the situation, on the executive, on that sort of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Rojas. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Cool. I'm going to go to Joseph, and then Onyedika. Joseph.
Good evening, Roger.
Hi.
Thank you for making our time. So currently, I'm a product manager at an early stage startup. We are yet to roll out. The startup is a marketplace, but for renting rather than like purchasing stuff. So rather than buying stuff, you get to rent things from other people. And I'm currently working on like metrics to track over, like, I settled on like 3: sign up, conversion, and then retention. But like the problem I have with retention, though, with settling on how to track retention, is that because it's a renting product, it's not something that I believe people would fix into their. It's not an app they open every day or every week. It's something they would only open when they need to rent something. So like I've been struggling with coming up with like a framework to track user retention over like any period of time.
Sure. So when does a user get value in your platform?
When they get a rented product.
Cool. So you definitely want to track number of products rented per user, right?
Okay.
And you definitely want to track time from sign up to renting the product, right?
Okay.
So that's time to value. Like when the person first signs up to them actually getting value, we've said getting value is when they're renting something. So are you measuring how quickly they're getting value on your platform. So that's something I'd focus on.
Okay.
And then what
thank you.
percentage of users that sign up are getting value as well?
Yeah,
Would be a
yeah,
good thing to measure.
yeah. Because like, yeah, I had in mind to like measure like sign up and conversion, and then with retention. Like, thank you very much.
And you, I don't know what type of products they are. Like, do they rent them once a year, once every 2 years? What does that look like?
We're trying to make it like as let's say is the word generic now, but pretty much you'll be able to rent anything that's rentable, if I would use that word. Anything that anybody has and is not currently using but wants to lease out for a period of time and make some cash.
Okay, so that raises an interesting thing. So instead of a single user, which might just rent one thing a year and 2 years later rent something else, what you might want to measure is you want to measure the utility of the assets being rented. So how many times, like out of a month, how many days is an item rented? Of what that looks like. So you might put, instead of looking at just the rentees or the user side who rents the item, how many, that you might want to measure retention by, are the assets actually being utilized? Are the things on the platform being rented? Because if they're being rented, then people are more likely to list things, and it shows that there's meaningful engagement and that you've got a good match of demand versus supply by measuring the utility of the things being rented. So how many days in a month, what percentage of the month is, on average, are the assets on your platform rented? And if you're close to 50%, might be a good thing that each asset is rented half the time, or some assets, you might have different categories of assets. Like if you're renting a boyfriend, or if you're renting Alessandra, then you might just do it once, and then he gets hitched and you never rent him again. You might rent him once and never want to rent him again. But you want to look at different assets of assets, and you can chat around that. Okay, does that kind of give you an idea of what you want to rent? But on a marketplace, you typically want metrics for both sides, for the supply and the demand.
Okay, thank you very much, Roger. Like this should work. I'll think through them. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, I guess
that's around value creation. You can also think about value. Value creation. You can also think about value capture, of how do you make money and how much money are you making and what is the net profit or the net margin per item on the platform, those sorts of things. So item like per month. So is there a small item, is there an item with a small margin that is rented a lot? Do you make more money off that, or do you make more money off a large item that gets rented for 2 days a month? And so looking at like inventory analysis on your side as the business of measuring how much money per month do you make per item, and that'll be a multiplier of its price and how much it's rented by and its utility. So it's a combination of those two. It might be an interesting like North Star metric for the business.
Okay. Thank you very much, Roger.
Cool. I think Alessandro wants you to reach out to him. He's got a bunch of ideas.
Yeah, I'll send you a message on LinkedIn now.
If you're sorry, I don't think Alessandro was responding to you. I think he was responding to Joseph. Anyway, Onyedinka. Yeah, Onyedinka, sorry.
Hi everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry. Yeah, I have 2 questions. So if first is like a follow-up question to, sorry, let me get his name now. So Temisa's question.
Yes.
Then second would be, so let me just give the follow-up question first,
Go
right? So around the, getting developers involved in discovery and all that, right? I've tried it and I see that it works. The output is definitely better. But there are certain situations where I think probably because we have mostly virtual calls, but there are certain situations where you have developers on the call and they are trying to get them to like join the conversation, speak, drop their ideas and all, and they are just mute, right? And you're calling up on them, contribute, and nothing goes on. I don't know if you have any advice for that kind of situation. So should I go ahead with the second question and you answer this?
No, let me answer that one first.
Okay.
So getting developers to be value creation focused instead of code creation is like a huge shift. I say it, oh, you should just do this. I'm fully aware of how difficult it is. And this is a prime example. One way of getting, so generally, when I've done quite a lot of online facilitation, if you're trying to get people to facilitate more, one way is just to create moments where everyone writes down a contribution. So run a 5-minute timer and everyone jot down some ideas, and then everyone takes a turn to share it. So you can kind of democratize, instead of putting people on the spot of like, oh, what do you think? And they're like, oh, but I don't feel comfortable sharing in this way. You kind of pause, create space for everyone to work on it. And specifically, don't ask them first. Ask the other people first so they can get an idea of how to deliver their feedback, and then you go to them. So creating a different, like creating more variance in those meetings or in those workshops, where some of it is, this is what we're doing, get feedback. Another is like, okay, great, this is what we've run. Let's do a little reflection, or let's do a little retro of what worked, what didn't work, what could we do better, or let's have everyone submit 3 ideas, and so put down a bunch of ideas or sticky notes on a mirror board or a shared a fig jam or whatever it is, and then have everyone start on one and then add an idea to it. So do a little like brainstorming technique into it, or have everyone vote. A lot of these online platforms allow you to vote on stickies, so you can select a bunch of stickies and have people vote, and then you can ask them, why did you vote for this, or why did you vote for that? Like, it gets some engagement based off the activities. So if you can get sort of level the playing field a bit, and then get them to explain reasoning and talk through that, could be a way of pulling more engagement out of people who don't feel comfortable engaging or being put on the spot in a workshop session.
I think this sounds interesting. Is there like any resource where I can do like a deeper dive into it to just learn more, probably about the techniques or so?
I explained this to somebody on my team just last week, but I don't have any links for you specifically. I mean, I have a bunch of, there's a lot of design thinking brainstorming techniques. You could maybe if you just Google for design thinking brainstorming techniques. I know the D School, Stanford D School, or Hasselplattner D School has a whole bunch of different techniques. There's a lot of different ideation techniques or feedback techniques. I know that Miro has a bunch of templates. So if you just look through the Miro templates, there's a number of different formats and ways of getting people to contribute. Another thing that you can look at doing is before the session, doing a bit of an icebreaker or doing something to get people to share a little bit. And so kind of you set the tone of the meeting that people are going to be sharing and engaging in different ways. And it could be something complete, like what did you do on the weekend, or pick an emoji for how you're feeling, like how was your weekend or something like that. Like get people to open up and share something a little bit personal, not sensitive, but a little bit personal, will often make them feel a little, like everyone feels a little more vulnerable, they're more likely to share. So there's a bunch of different techniques like that. I don't have a specific resource for you, but I would look at ideation or brainstorming techniques that you can facilitate online. Teresa, do you want to throw one more question on the back of that? that response?
Yeah. So I wanted to add something, okay. Right? From my experience, I've seen that. So where I work currently, the senior engineer, right? It's part of the discovery process. So I do the BROD. Send it to the senior engineer, gives his comments, because finally he's the one that writes the technical note as well. So I've seen that when he goes through the BRD, he gives his comments. We discuss about the comments, and then we get back. So even with this, challenges still come up. That was the one I was explaining earlier. But the one that I've worked most, which is sending them the BRD and then going over it. At the point where I'm doing a review of the BRD, I'm just with the senior engineer, maybe the senior designer. They give their feedback. At the point where ticket is being created and there's challenges, the junior engineers, they would ask the senior engineer, right? And then he knows better, he has a better context. So I'm saying this as against what the last speaker was saying. Instead of having maybe all the engineers, you just have 1 or 2 engineers that's well respected, and he would have the conversation with you, and at the case he would also give his feedback, so that others will be working at the point where they have any issues, they will have to speak to that engineer instead of having all engineers on the call. That's what I've
So I
planned.
would definitely encourage you to include the other engineers earlier in the process. You can still give it to the senior engineer for review and feedback, but have a junior engineer be part of the ideation process with you.
Okay. Maybe that's where I have issues from. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Onyedika, your second question.
Yeah, thanks. So second question is kind of deviating from product management a bit, but it's more around operations and product marketing. I'm going to use Joseph's startup as an example, right? So example, I'm doing something.
Hi, Onyedika. Sorry,
Hi.
Roger. So,
Yes.
Onyedika, please, you have to be a bit fast with your question so that Roger can take it. We have like 9 minutes more.
Thank you. Yeah. So using Joseph's startup as an example, renting houses and all that, right? From a supply point of view, any tips around getting suppliers, managing that pipeline, things around product marketing, trying to get that end of the market spectrum rather than the other end as the consumer or customer side?
Yeah, so marketplaces are incredibly difficult businesses to kickstart. I've written a longer blog post on it. I've thrown it in the chat here. But I've got like 4 or 5 basic strategies on how to kickstart a marketplace. Either you throw money at it and just advertise both sides and trying to fill both sides of the pipeline, or you focus on a niche. So instead of trying to say, oh, you can rent anything on our platform, be like Amazon and say, we're starting with books, or we're starting with property, or we're starting with household appliances that you can rent, or we're starting with tools. And that's the niche we're going to focus on. We reach critical mass with that niche, and then we expand to the next niche, and then we expand to the next niche. And you can kind of eventually become the everything platform. But don't start by trying to be the everything platform. Start by being a niche in order to build critical mass. Same way Amazon did with being books before being everything. The next one is to be one side of the marketplace. So if you're renting certain items, have your team or have the company buy those items and supply them, be the supply side initially so you can just focus on how do we get people to rent our stuff. And once you got that going and all your assets are being utilized, you can then say, okay, now how do we get other people to list their own assets? And you focus on the second side of the marketplace. So that's the second part. And then the other one would be delivered adjacent value. So is there a way like insurance, or is there something you can deliver to one side of the marketplace, like to the supply side? In this case, I think it's a difficult business to do, but in many marketplace businesses, like if it's plumbers, say, can we provide a company management tool or invoicing tool to plumbers and tradesmen? And then over time, we open that up as a marketplace that allow people to book them and have their schedule and that sort of stuff tied into it. So is there an adjacent product to the marketplace that we can deliver value to one side first, and then open up the marketplace and match them with the different side of suppliers? So those are like 4 high-level strategies of how to kickstart a marketplace. They're all in that article that I wrote in 2015 or something, 2019. So if you want more feedback, that's mostly there.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I have a couple of follow-up questions, but because of time, I don't know if it's okay if I message you on Slack.
Cool. You're welcome to message me on Slack. Even better is pop them in the public #questions channel, and I'll just tag me in them, and I'll respond directly there, and then everyone else in this call can see the responses and engage with it directly.
Right, thanks. That works.
Sure thing. Olasinde, can I steal 2 minutes of self-promotion?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, great. I've been working on a little side project for about 18 months on the nuances of building in Africa and how building in Africa is different to building in the rest of the world. And so I've kind of come up with about 24 different nuances broken up into different sections so this is the page. It's broken. I'll just scroll right down to the bottom. So there's cultural aspects, there's market characteristics, and there's unique systems. And so all of these things are what is unique about building products, teams, or startups in Africa. I'm about halfway through it. All of these ones with exclamation mark, I still need to flesh out. The reason I'm throwing this out there is I don't have capacity to finish this because I've got a baby coming in 2 months' time, and I'm not going to be able to get this up by the end of the year. So I'm busy looking for a co-author. If anyone is really interested in this and wants to help contribute, each of these aspects, I'm trying to create at least 2 paragraphs, one around like, what does this actually mean? And then what does it change? So how does it change how you build a product to start up a team because of this aspect? How do you do design thinking workshops in a space where you have an ogre culture where you can't just throw ideas out. Like the same problem Onyedika just had of like developers don't want to engage because they don't believe it's equal. They don't feel like they can contribute. They don't like there's a nuance there of how people don't want to engage. And so how do you identify that and then actually change your behavior or change your delivery because of that? So for all 24 of these items, it's kind of fleshed out. It's been a little passion project of mine. I'm looking at building it. Like I said, I need somebody. Here's the nuances of West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa, or how the cultural people are different, how you need to do things differently. If the structure fancy, if you'd like to engage with it, if you think it sounds fun, you've got some experience that you want to contribute, I'm looking for anecdotes and case studies. I'm looking for people to give me feedback on where it's wrong. And I'm looking for somebody to help me flesh out and actually write out the last sort of 40 to 50% of it. Take my scrappy notes and actually compile that into stuff. If that sounds like you, let me know. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roger. I mean, this is highly commendable. I mean, I think everybody should really be anticipating this product in that sense, because I mean, this is going to really be a major contribution to, you know, to the ecosystem. Trust me. And coincidentally, right, immediately you said it at the very beginning. I said I was going to say this at the end of the call. That so I have a group of PMs that like they are my inner circle, right? We had a very hot debate, like I think 2 weeks ago, and we, you know, from just a WhatsApp debate really, and from that debate we really concluded that we're going to, you know, write something, and it was actually building for Africa. I'm telling you the fact, like same thing, building for Africa, and the intention was to really give a narrative of how, you know, the whole orientation of product changes, right, when you're building for Africa and all of that. And we wanted to make it an open source. Of course, we wanted to flesh a lot of things out first before we throw it to the public. So we wanted to make it an open source documentation and all of that, compiling vast experiences of product managers together and all of that. Yeah, we've not started it, but I'm just happy that you are.
I have started it. Come contribute.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I'm really happy. I'm even going to share the news with them just to let them know that, yeah, there are so many people outside there, right, that care about Africa and all of that. So I would say that if there's anybody that is really interested in working with Roger on this, please do feel free to reach out to him. I think I need to go back and see if I can make time for this. Really, I would love to really be part of this, but let me just go back and, you know, plan myself, then I'll get back to you. But any other person who is interested, please reach out to Roger, and yeah, let's do this for ourselves and for Africa as well. Thank you so much, Roger. And I mean, there is no way to end this mentorship session better than this, right? I feel so refreshed and happy about this progress of yours, really, of your product. I mean, you know, it's going to be a very big one, right, when you are done. And thank you for everyone that joined. Thank you, Roger, for the mentorship session. Thank you for always being available and always being valuable to us, like in this community. It's really a great privilege. And I think, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for contributing, from Mamuyowi to Ifeolua to Joshua and the other persons, right? And thank you, Ife, for looking to rent a Valentine. So I think people are on the call. If there's anybody interested, please do feel free to reach out to Ifeolua. And I think that wraps it up. We are going to have our weekly check-in call on Saturday. So yeah, please, I think we should all be there, right? So yeah, that will be the end of the call. And Roger, I don't know if you have any other comment before we leave. Just if you have any.
No, just thanks to you guys. These sessions are only interesting when you ask interesting questions. So
okay.
Keep coming, keep asking interesting questions. I'm happy to do what I can.